Deep within the vast woodland area associated with Eustace Conway's land, a small group of explorers set out to understand an old, barely remembered section of terrain that appeared on outdated maps. The forest stretched endlessly, filled with tall trees, uneven ground, and long-forgotten pathways that seemed to shift depending on the light. The team, led by a man named Drew, expected nothing more than a routine walk through dense vegetation, perhaps documenting old boundary markers or natural formations. However, as they moved deeper, the environment began to feel unusually still. It was not frightening in itself, but noticeably different from the lively movement one expects in a healthy forest. Birds were fewer in number, and the usual rustling of small animals was absent. Even the wind seemed softer, as though passing carefully through the trees. The group continued forward with curiosity rather than concern, unaware that they were approaching a place that had remained undisturbed for a very long time. Their attention was focused on navigation, not realizing that subtle changes in the land were slowly guiding them towards something hidden beneath the surface. What started as a simple exploration would soon become a discovery that reshaped their understanding of the entire area. The unusual silence. As the group moved further into the forest, they began to notice a growing silence that felt layered rather than empty. It was not just the absence of sound, but the absence of expected natural rhythm. Normally, a forest carries constant background life, yet here even that felt muted. Drew paused several times, sensing that the environment around them was unusually balanced, almost as if it had been undisturbed for decades. The others in the group also began to lower their voices without consciously deciding to do so. Conversations became shorter, and footsteps seemed more deliberate. The silence was not threatening, but it created a sense of awareness that made them more observant. Every small sound, such as a branch shifting or soil compressing underfoot, became more noticeable. This heightened sensitivity made the group more cautious, though they still believed they were simply exploring an isolated part of the forest. They assumed the quietness was natural, perhaps caused by geography or seasonal changes. However, what they were experiencing was a subtle transition into a space that had not been regularly disturbed. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to encourage silence, as though it was guiding them toward careful observation, following the old trails. The group relied on aged maps and faint markings that suggested the presence of old trails once used long ago. These paths were no longer visible in a clear sense, but rather existed as subtle depressions in the land and slight changes in vegetation. Drew took the lead, carefully interpreting these signs while the others followed closely. The forest appeared increasingly dense, yet these old roots seemed to open small passages between thick clusters of trees. It felt as if nature had slowly reclaimed something that once belonged to human use, leaving only faint reminders behind. Occasionally, they would find broken stones or worn wooden fragments that suggested past activity in the area. There was a sense that the land had once been structured differently, though time had softened all evidence. The group did not feel lost, but they were aware that the terrain was becoming less predictable. Each step forward required more attention, as the environment no longer resembled the orderly forest they had entered earlier. Instead, it felt like they were walking through layers of history that had been partially erased by time, leaving only traces for careful observers to interpret. First signs in the ground. Eventually, the explorers reached a section of the forest where the ground began to change in texture and color. The soil appeared darker and more compact, with patches where vegetation grew unevenly. Drew noticed subtle irregularities that did not match the surrounding terrain. At first, these details seemed insignificant, but the more they observed, the clearer it became that this area had been altered in some way long ago. The group began to examine the ground more closely, brushing away leaves and debris. Beneath the surface, faint outlines of structured shapes appeared, suggesting that something had once been placed or constructed here. The discovery sparked curiosity rather than alarm, as they assumed it might be remnants of old surveying work or forgotten infrastructure. The atmosphere remained calm, though slightly more focused. Each member of the group began paying closer attention to the ground, noticing patterns that repeated in subtle ways. These early signs suggested that they were approaching something intentionally designed rather than naturally formed. However, without clear context, they continued forward, believing they were simply uncovering fragments of history buried beneath years of natural growth. The hidden metal structure. As they advanced further into the darker section of the forest floor, Drew's attention was drawn to a faint metallic reflection partially hidden beneath soil and leaves. The group gathered around to investigate, carefully clearing away layers of earth. What emerged was a weathered metal surface, flat and partially buried, suggesting it had been there for a considerable amount of time. It did not resemble modern construction, but rather an older installation, possibly used for access or storage. The structure was simple, with no visible markings indicating its purpose. The surrounding soil appeared slightly disturbed in a circular pattern, as though something had once been opened or closed here repeatedly in the distant past. The team exchanged thoughtful glances, trying to interpret what they were seeing. There was no immediate explanation, but the presence of metal deep within untouched forest suggested human involvement long ago. Despite its mystery, the object did not feel threatening. Instead, it felt like a forgotten component of something larger that had slowly been reclaimed by nature. The group carefully documented the structure, unaware that it marked the beginning of a deeper discovery. Markings on the trees, not far from the metal structure, the group began noticing unusual markings carved into the bark of nearby trees. These symbols were simple yet deliberate, repeated across multiple trunks in the same general direction. Drew studied them carefully, recognizing that they were not random scratches, but intentional markings made with purpose. Each symbol seemed to point toward a specific area deeper within the forest. The carvings were aged, partially healed by the tree's natural growth, indicating they had been made many years earlier. The group speculated that these might have been navigation markers, possibly created by surveyors or researchers working in the region decades ago. What made them particularly interesting was their consistency, as though they followed a structured system. The forest around them remained quiet, but now their attention was fully engaged. The markings suggested guidance rather than warning, encouraging movement in a specific direction. This discovery shifted the group's mindset from casual exploration to structured investigation. They began to follow the implied direction of the symbols, sensing that they were being led toward a specific point within the forest that had long been forgotten. The strange patterns in soil. As they followed the direction indicated by the tree markings, the group began noticing patterns forming naturally within the soil. These were not obvious at first, but became clearer with observation. Circular impressions and repeated shapes appeared across patches of ground, suggesting repeated activity in the area at some point in the past. Drew knelt to examine them more closely, realizing that these patterns aligned with the direction of the carved tree symbols. It became increasingly clear that the forest contained a coordinated design that had been partially erased by time. The soil variations suggested that something had once been placed or moved repeatedly in these locations. The group began to document everything carefully, recognizing that they were uncovering evidence of structured human presence rather than natural formation. Despite the mystery, the atmosphere remained steady, with no sense of danger. Instead, there was growing curiosity and focus. The forest seemed to hold a layered history, and each discovery added another piece to a larger puzzle that was slowly coming into view beneath the surface. A forgotten survey site. After following the patterns for some time, the group began to suspect that they were walking through an old survey site or research zone. The arrangement of markings, soil patterns, and metal fragments suggested systematic activity rather than random occurrence. Drew proposed that the area might have been used for geological or environmental study many years ago, possibly abandoned when the work was completed or interrupted. This explanation made sense to the group, as it aligned with the structured nature of what they were observing. The forest itself seemed to have gradually reclaimed the site, softening its edges and covering its features with natural growth. There was a sense of quiet history embedded in the landscape, as though the land had slowly absorbed human presence over time. The group's curiosity deepened, and they began to view their exploration as an opportunity to reconstruct a forgotten chapter of activity in the region. Every new detail added weight to the idea that they were standing in a place once carefully studied, now left to evolve naturally, without intervention. The buried hatch revealed. Eventually, the group arrived at a slightly depressed area of ground where the soil appeared uneven and compacted. Drew carefully cleared away layers of earth, revealing the edge of a large metal hatch embedded within the ground. It was old, weathered, and partially concealed by roots and soil, suggesting long-term abandonment. The group gathered around it, observing its structure and condition. There were no obvious markings indicating its purpose, but its design suggested it was once used for controlled access to something below the surface. The discovery created a moment of focused silence as they considered its significance. Rather than fear, there was a sense of historical curiosity. The hatch appeared to belong to a forgotten system, possibly linked to the survey site they had been reconstructing through earlier findings. Drew carefully examined the latch mechanism, noting its simplicity and age. The surrounding soil indicated it had remained untouched for many years. The group documented the find thoroughly, aware that they had reached a key point in their exploration of the forest's hidden past, the descent below ground. After careful consideration, Drew and the group decided to explore beneath the hatch to better understand its purpose. With caution, they opened it, revealing a narrow vertical shaft leading underground. The air below felt still and undisturbed, suggesting long-term closure. A simple ladder or structural support system was visible along the sides, indicating that it had once been designed for safe access. The group approached the descent carefully, taking turns to observe the interior before committing to entry. The shaft led to a modest depth, not extensive, but enough to separate it clearly from the surface environment. The experience felt like stepping into a preserved section of time, rather than something unknown or dangerous. The walls were structured with aged materials that hinted at careful construction. The group proceeded slowly, documenting their descent and observing every detail. Their focus remained analytical, interpreting the structure as part of a long-abandoned underground installation rather than anything mysterious or threatening. The old underground chamber. At the bottom of the shaft, the group discovered a small underground chamber that appeared to have been used for storage or field operations. The space was simple, with wooden reinforcements and scattered remnants of tools and materials that had deteriorated over time. Drew carefully examined the area, noting its organized yet abandoned nature. There were signs that the space had once been actively used, possibly as part of a research or surveying effort. The chamber contained shelves, containers, and surfaces designed for practical use, though everything had been left untouched for years. The group moved slowly, observing each detail with interest rather than concern. The environment felt enclosed but stable, with no signs of recent activity. The discovery reinforced the idea that they had uncovered a forgotten operational site, rather than anything unexplained. The chamber represented the final layer of a long-abandoned system, preserved beneath the forest as nature gradually reclaimed everything above. The strange drawings on wood. Inside the chamber, the group noticed markings on the wooden surfaces that appeared to be diagrams or field notes. These drawings were rough but intentional, likely created for documentation purposes. They depicted structural layouts, directional indicators, and repeated shapes that corresponded with the symbols found on the trees above. Drew carefully studied them, realizing that they connected the underground chamber to the surface markings. The drawings suggested a coordinated system of mapping or environmental observation. Although aged and faded, they provided valuable insight into the purpose of the site. The group began to piece together a narrative of structured exploration that had taken place long ago. There was no indication of anything unusual or threatening in the drawings, only careful documentation of terrain and structural points. This reinforced the idea that the entire area had once been part of a larger study or project that had since been abandoned. The chamber felt like a preserved record of that work. The mysterious tools and objects. Further inside the chamber, the group found various tools and objects that appeared to have been left behind during the site's active period. These included measuring instruments, containers, and materials used for fieldwork. Everything was arranged in a practical manner, suggesting organized use rather than disorder. Drew examined several items, noting their aged but purposeful design. The tools reflected a time when manual observation and direct interaction with the environment were essential. The objects supported the theory that this location had been part of a long-term study or survey operation. The group handled everything carefully, ensuring that they preserved the integrity of the site. There was no sense of danger, only historical curiosity. Each item added another layer of understanding to the purpose of the underground chamber. It became increasingly clear that this was a workspace that had simply been left behind, frozen in time as nature slowly reclaimed its surroundings. The locked inner door. At the far end of the chamber, the group discovered a second door made of aged wood reinforced with iron fittings. Unlike the main entrance, this door appeared more secure and deliberate in its construction. Drew examined it carefully, noting scratches and wear consistent with long-term closure. The group discussed its possible purpose, suggesting it may have led to a restricted section of the facility. However, there was no immediate indication of danger. The door felt like a boundary between different functional areas rather than a barrier meant to conceal something alarming. After careful inspection, Drew opened it slowly, revealing another small room beyond. The space was dim, but contained similar structural elements and organizational patterns. The discovery suggested that the underground system was larger than initially expected, with multiple connected sections designed for different purposes. The group continued documenting their findings, maintaining a steady and investigative approach throughout. The hidden workshop. The room beyond the inner door appeared to be a small workshop or preparation area. It contained work surfaces, storage sections, and partially completed materials that had remained untouched for years. Drew carefully observed the layout, noting its practical design. The space suggested that individuals once worked here regularly, likely processing data, preparing materials, or conducting field analysis. Everything was arranged with purpose, though time had softened its structure. The group moved through the space slowly, documenting tools and remaining materials. There was no indication of sudden abandonment, but rather a gradual cessation of activity. The workshop felt like a transitional space between fieldwork and storage, supporting the theory of a structured research environment. Each detail added clarity to the overall function of the underground system. It was becoming increasingly clear that this entire location had once played a significant role in organized exploration of the surrounding land. The unexpected movement and echoes. While examining the deeper sections of the workshop, the group began noticing subtle echoes and shifts in sound caused by movement within the structure. These were not alarming but rather natural effects of enclosed space and aged construction. Drew paused occasionally to listen, realizing that the chamber amplified even small noises. Dust particles occasionally shifted from overhead beams, creating soft disturbances that added to the atmosphere. The group remained focused, interpreting these sounds as structural responses rather than anything unusual. The environment was stable, though clearly old and sensitive to movement. The echoes created a layered acoustic effect that made the space feel more dynamic than it actually was. Despite this, the group maintained their composure and continued documenting their findings. The underground system responded naturally to their presence, revealing its age and long period of inactivity, escaping the underground space. After completing their documentation, the group decided to return to the surface. They carefully retraced their steps through the chamber, workshop, and shaft leading upward. The ascent required patience and coordination, but the structure remained stable throughout their exit. Drew led the way, ensuring that each member followed safely. The process was methodical and calm, reflecting their organized approach to exploration. As they reached the surface, the forest appeared unchanged, continuing its quiet presence as before. The transition from underground to open air felt natural, marking the end of their investigation into the hidden structure. The group took a moment to review their findings, confirming that they had uncovered a long-abandoned site rather than anything active or threatening. The aftermath in the forest. Once back above ground, the group noticed that the forest felt slightly different, though this may have been due to their heightened awareness. The environment remained stable, with no significant changes to its natural state. They gathered their equipment and prepared to leave the area, reflecting on the significance of what they had discovered. The experience left them with a deeper appreciation for the layered history hidden beneath natural landscapes. The forest itself continued its quiet existence, unaffected by their brief exploration. The group departed without urgency, carrying with them documentation and observations that would later help reconstruct the purpose of the site. It was clear that they had uncovered a forgotten chapter of activity rather than anything unexplained or dangerous. The search for Eustace Conway. Following the discovery, questions arose about the historical ownership of the land and the role of Eustace Conway in its management. However, there was no indication that he was directly involved in the underground structure. Instead, records suggested that the site may have predated his presence on the land entirely. The group attempted to locate additional historical references, but found limited information. This added to the mystery surrounding the area's past. While some assumed a connection, there was no clear evidence linking him to the underground installation. The forest retained its secrets, leaving many questions unanswered. The investigation shifted from exploration to historical research as the group sought to understand the broader context of the land. The lingering mystery. In the weeks that followed, interest in the discovery gradually spread among researchers and local historians. Discussions focused on the purpose of the underground system and the identity of those who built it. Despite efforts to interpret the findings, no definitive conclusion was reached. The forest remained unchanged, continuing its quiet presence over the hidden structure below. Occasional visitors reported subtle impressions of depth in the soil, but nothing concrete was confirmed. The site became a point of curiosity rather than concern, representing a forgotten piece of history waiting to be fully understood. Drew and his team reflected on the experience as an important reminder of how landscapes can hold layers of human activity long after they are abandoned. The mystery remained open, but now it was viewed through the lens of historical exploration rather than uncertainty or fear. Conclusion of the story. The exploration of Eustace Conway's forest revealed a layered history hidden beneath what first appeared to be ordinary wilderness. What began as a simple journey through quiet woodland slowly unfolded into a careful discovery of old markings, buried metal structures, and an underground chamber that seemed long forgotten. Each finding suggested that the land had once been part of a structured system of human activity, possibly related to surveying or field research, rather than anything mysterious or unexplained. The forest itself acted like a natural archive, preserving traces of past work under soil, roots, and time. As Drew and his team pieced together the clues, it became clear that the site was not active and did not contain any ongoing presence. Instead, it reflected how nature gradually reclaims human spaces, softening their edges until they blend into the environment. The underground chamber, tools, and markings all pointed toward organized work that had simply been left behind and forgotten. In the end, the forest remained unchanged, quiet, and patient. The story did not end with fear or mystery, but with understanding. It showed how easily history can disappear beneath nature, waiting for someone curious enough to uncover it again and interpret it with care.